Welcome to August 2024, which means it is time to introduce a new grain for our Grains Explorer Challenge. And this month, it is another ancient grain that is also gluten-free and is most commonly known here in America as birdseed. Yes, you have probably seen it, but as birdseed. But it is a wonderful ancient grain, and that is millet. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel we talk all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. So this month we are going to be exploring the grain millet. This is part of our Grains Explorer Challenge that we are doing for 2024, which means every month we are exploring a new grain to broaden our horizons, to stretch our limits, to be introduced to grains that you may not be very familiar with. This is actually a grain that I have not tried myself, but yet has been sitting on my shelf for a very long time. Now, real quick before we begin, this challenge is for anyone and everyone, but for those of you who want to receive the full adventure, extra recipes, and more, be sure to join our exclusive community, The Grainy Bunch. We have a wonderful group of people, live hangouts every month. So just go to grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer to find out more about this challenge and also to sign up for the Grainy Bunch as well. And if you are new to this Grains Explorer Challenge, then be sure to check out the playlist up here to get caught up on all the grains that we have done so far and what we will be doing in the future. In this video, we're going to be exploring the grain millet. And as always, we will first be covering a history and general overview of the grain, the nutritional benefits, the types of millet that you can find, what millet is used for, and then finally, how you can use millet in your own kitchen. Before we begin, of course, let me know in the comments below, have you tried millet? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What are your favorite recipes? We all need to know all the things, so let us know in the comments. All right, so first up, a general history and overview of millet. Fascinating little grain and is considered to be one of the ancient of ancient grains. It is an ancient grain that dates back thousands of years. It's believed to come from East Asia, and archaeologists believe that it was actually the first grain of China about 1,000 years before rice hit the scene. There's a lot of references to millet through many different cultures. Chinese myths attribute millet domestication to Shennong, who is a legendary emperor of China, and Hu Ji, whose name means Lord of Millet. In fact, noodles made from millet were found in a Chinese tomb that dates back to about 4,000 years ago. And this is actually the oldest evidence of millet that has been found in China to date. We see that millet is mentioned in ancient biblical texts. We see it in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4:9. And if that sounds familiar, that is because millet is listed as one of the grains used in the infamous Ezekiel bread recipe, which I have done before. So definitely be sure to try out Ezekiel bread to use millet this month. The ancient Greek poet Hesiod mentioned millet in one of his poems. Also, the ancient Greek philosopher Theophrastus, I probably butchered his name, sorry, who was actually the successor to Aristotle. He mentioned millet along with wheat in his text, Inquiry to Plants, written in 3rd century BC. I have to look at my notes for this one. Fan Shen Qi Shu was written in 2800 BC, and it lists millet as one of the 5 sacred Chinese crops. So bottom line, we definitely have a well-established history that millet has been around for a very long time and is an ancient grain that is through Asian cultures, India, and even into the Middle East. Today, it is grown in India, Nigeria, and other Asian and African countries. And the really cool thing about it, the reason why it's so popular, is it is very drought resistant. It can be grown in very harsh conditions. It doesn't need fertile soil. It can be grown in very poor soil. It's quite a resilient little plant. Probably why it's been around for thousands of years. India is currently the highest producer, producing about 38% of the world's millet, which is about triple that of the next countries in line. So they definitely are the prominent producer of millet. And finally, it is very similar to sorghum and is also in the same cereal family as wheat, barley, and rice. Next up, the nutritional benefits of millet. So as I already stated, it is a gluten-free grain, which is excellent for those people with celiac disease or those that truly need to stay away from gluten at all costs. This is a way to get a great whole grain in their diets without gluten. So as with all whole grains, it is very rich in fiber, both insoluble and soluble, which is good for your gut, good for your heart, good for your body. We all need fiber. We need all the things. So you will be getting fiber so long as you're consuming this as a whole grain. It is also very rich in protein and calcium and has more essential amino acids than other cereal grains. It is an excellent source of vitamin A, which, if you've been following me enough, that is actually slightly deficient in wheat. So this is a grain to have to counteract that slight deficiency. It's also very rich in B vitamins, phosphorus, potassium, antioxidants, and iron. Oh, and also niacin, which is a B vitamin. It's also a low glycemic index food, which is why on WebMD, they state that it actually is a very healthy whole grain for those with diabetes or needing to watch the foods that you eat that are going to spike your blood sugar. This means that it's not going to really spike that blood sugar. So again, like many whole grains, many benefits, but the key points with millet is that it is typically higher in calcium and rich in vitamin A as well. Now, types of millet. Now, there are about 6,000 varieties of millet, which is insane. But bottom line is they basically go into two categories. The first category is large or major millet, and the second category, you guessed it, is small or minor millet. Large or major millet is the most common. And in those, we have the most common in those categories. So in the large or major millet category, the most popular varieties are pearl, foxtail, proso, and finger or ragi millet. And in the small or minor millet categories, the most popular or common millets are kodo, barnyard, little, guinea, brown top, fonio, and adlay, or also known as Job's tears. Now, the most common that you will probably find sold for human consumption is pearl millet. And do know that with each of these varieties, they all have multiple colors that they come in as well. But probably whenever you go to buy millet, it's most likely going to be some type of pearl millet. But just know that all of these types of millets are great. They have excellent nutritional value and you receive all of the benefits with them. All right, so now what is millet used for? And it is used from animal food all the way up to human consumption as well. Fun fact, typically here in the United States, if you were buying birdseed, millet will probably be in it. And it's what a lot of people here in the United States associate millet with, is more birdseed. Thanks to the gluten-free movement, it has become more popular for human consumption, but generally speaking, people really were only using it as birdseed. Now, obviously, millet is predominantly used for food, which we will get to that in a bit on the ways that millet is used as food for humans. But other fun facts is it's also used like pretty much all grains. You know someone has made a liquor out of it or some sort of alcoholic drink. And sure enough, there is one where millet is the main grain that is distilled into a liquor called rakshi, and you find it in Nepal, India, as well as Tibet. It is a traditional food used in Russian, German, and Chinese cuisine. And you can generally find it in all forms. You can find it in just your typical whole grain millet. You can actually buy millet flour or mill it yourself, mill the millet yourself. See what I did there? And you can also find puffed millet, which leads us to how to use millet in your own kitchen. So first of all, it's like quinoa. If you're already familiar with quinoa, possibly rice or even amaranth, it's very similar to those. Now, how you actually just cook millet, just to cook up some millet, very simple. 2 cups water, 1 cup of millet. You put all that in a pot, you bring it to a boil, and then you bring it down to a simmer. Put a lid over it and simmer for about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes, until most of the liquid has been absorbed by the millet. And then you remove it from the heat, keep the lid on, and like rice, you allow it to steam and that extra liquid to be absorbed, and there you go. You have an easy peasy cooked grain. Now, other ways to use it is that's one way to use it. If you're just needing some food really quick, just boil up some millet. You can make it into a porridge. Russians actually typically do that. It's to make millet into a porridge. They like it sweet or savory. You can also pop millet like popcorn. It does puff up, so similar to amaranth. You can just pop it and have that as a healthy snack. You can dress up a salad by just simply toasting the millet, just lightly toasting that millet, throw it into a salad. You can substitute it for a recipe that calls for quinoa. Of course, you can make the Ezekiel bread recipe, which I will be sure to have linked for y'all below. There's actually a popular Indian flatbread. It is a roti flatbread, but instead of wheat flour, it is all millet flour, which do know that in India, millet flour is actually known as bari or bajra flour. So if you see that in a recipe, that's just millet flour, just ground up some millet and you've got some flour. But this is actually a recipe that I plan to try myself. So again, it's just a roti bread, but with millet flour. You can use millet in granola recipes. You can just add it into muffins, throw it into a stew. Again, it's one of those tiny grains that are quite versatile. And I think if you just use a bit of imagination, you'll find many ways to use it. So let me know which one in the comments below that you actually plan on using millet for, or what you've already tried millet in. So again, this is a grain that I have not tried myself yet. So I definitely plan, I got to do it this month. I'm definitely going to do it. And anytime you make a recipe using either my recipes, or if you're following us with the Grains Explorer Challenge, then be sure to tag me on social media. You can find me over on Instagram at Grains and Grit. But there you go with millet, exploring this grain. I look forward to this month. This is going to be stretching me as well. So again, if you want to catch up on the Grains Explorer Challenge, then be sure to check this playlist out here to get caught up on all the grains. grainsandgrit.com/grains explorer, and check out the Grainy Bunch because we got some pretty cool people over there. My grainies, you know I love you and you're awesome. So hopefully this was helpful and I'll see you next week. Bye.